When I purchased the Loco, I haven't really done any modifications other than the little cylinder covers that I said earlier. I was thinking about maybe making some cylinder covers, side tank covers, just little overlays on the sides, just to, I don't know, a little bit of make it look a little bit less Mamod. I'm never really well, I shouldn't really say this, but I'm never really a fan of the original Mamod Loco unmodified. I think it's always crying out for extra little finishing touches, really. It's a nice basic Loco, it's a good introduction to garden railways, but I think it can offer a lot more. Shame there's a little bit of rust on the top here. When I purchased the Loco, it almost looked unsteamed, although I think this was in its previous days when it still had little slide valves. Looking at the rest of the Loco, I know there's a little bit of paint loss, but even when I've been running it, it's loosened up a tiny amount, and it just seems to be running absolutely beautifully at the moment. It's really almost like a sort of, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it really runs like a Swiss watch. Sound like a car salesman there. Looking at the bottom of the Loco again, you can see the frames themselves have been extended, and he's a little fan of these little mild steel rivets as well. It's got 5 little rivets in here, and just an indication of the engineering that's gone to this. You can see the brackets formed around here, rear buffer beams bolted on, got these slightly oversized nuts and bolts, gives it a little bit of character, a little bit of texture as well, I think. It's always good on these little cheaper little Locos. But you can see there's it's about 1.6mm piece of brass plate in there, and he's machined the holes in there, he's drilled those out and he's tapped the holes as well, so there's no little nuts and bolts on there, it just goes straight into little threaded little plates on the back. Again, those little brackets are bolted on here, so there's a lot of engineering just going on in a little tiny space. And what I like about this Loco is it still keeps a little bit of that Mamod look as well. And he's outlined the lining. It's a little bit over the top in my eye, but he's outlined it in red, and the actual red lining is really, really well done. There's no way I'd be able to replicate that by hand myself, so because the engineer has modelled this, has put a lot of time and effort into it, I'd like to keep it as it is really. If I want to modify a Loco and put side tank overlays, I think it's another excuse just to buy another Loco, really. There's only sort of so much you can do with these things, and as I said, it's very nicely engineered, very nicely put together. I'm a little bit reluctant to actually interfere with any of these parts around here. Not that I wouldn't be able to do it, but it seems a shame that someone's taken that much care just to undo their hard work, really. Yeah, another little examples of the engineering it's got in there. It's a little handrails, really nicely formed, just follows the shape of the top of the smoke box. Little brass knobs being threaded in as well, and that goes into the end of the side tank as well, so it locates it through these little brackets. The little brackets are slightly different on each end because one end's got the lubricator. When I first got this Loco, I was just sort of looking at how that pipe was soldered in, and the pipe, it's quite hard to see, but the bracket's actually formed around that, and then the bracket itself is soldered to the end of the pipe as well. So even though you've got quite a small pipe going into the lubricator, the junction between the pipe and the lubricator is quite solid as well. It's quite sturdy. It's reinforced with a little bracket that tucks over the top. Moving on to the back of the cab, you can see it's got this nice little bunker, little dummy coal load in there. Very professionally made. It's quite hard to see, but you can see there's a little bit of brass bar that's been bent really nicely around the top, and the brass bar's been bent back on itself, so it goes around here like this, and where it's bent back it's been filed out or drilled out a little slot there, and that just sort of locates it, so it must have made it much easier to solder a little bead of solder around the edge, and makes a really nice little finishing touch. Looks quite professional. On the real Loco that would have been a sort of a drawn or extruded sort of semicircular sort of ball nose just piece of bar. You can see more little rivets on the back here, and then I think, yeah, just the outside is folded over, and then this inside is folded over the edge there, riveted through, and there's a little fillet of solder just to finish off, so it hides the seam as well, so you've got this nice smooth detail on the back. Also, what I thought was quite a nice touch on the MEFS tank itself, there's going to be hard to see, inside the cab you've got a little filler right at the back of the bunker, goes through, little tube dives down there, there's a little knurled brass lock nut there so the burner just drops out. But the back of the cab itself, there's a piece of lead sheet folded over here as well, just helps give you a little bit more traction, especially with slide valve cylinders. Got quite a lot of weight up front, so that just gives you a bit more traction, a bit better weight distribution maybe. Looking inside the cab, this is a little bit fiddly to take off. Really, you want to take the mess burner out first, but it does come out if you unhook it from that tube. This is quite weighty, and you can just see. Can you see? Yep, see a little bit of lead sheet folded in there, and it's quite nice because you've got that hole slotted out through there, so the little filler tube pops out back. I think I might be wrong. Probably someone will correct me on this. I believe this is a Mike Chaney boiler. It's similar to one I've got, although the regulator and the regulator lever looks different. I've got a Mike Chaney loco. I think it's a kitten. It's very much like in a Mamod sort of style, but it's much larger. It's got a Mamod sort of upgrade cylinders of ones that are available from Dream Steam or PPS nowadays. Ones used to be sold by IP. Mike Chaney also made his own versions, made some sort of Mamod upgrades, which it's quite interesting to look up the history of these locos because there's all different manufacturers have been involved, and I myself, in a very small way, I'm trying to get into the sort of Mamod modifications as well. Just maybe making some aesthetic modifications mainly. I think the running gear's been sort of done and dusted so many times that we've really got running locos that really work well nowadays. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, as it were. Copper silver soldered boiler, operating pressure 40 psi, original Mamod sticker, please check water level, otherwise you're going to invalidate your warranty and probably get burnt off eyebrows and things like that. So just to check that once in a while, make sure you've got some water in there, is always a good idea. The little sight glass on this, sometimes you have a little quarter 40 ME little threaded unions over there, and by the time you've got all those, the little sight glass in the middle is tiny like this. This one's, it works really well. It doesn't leak at all, and I think it's a 5mm diameter. Some are 4mm. 5mm gives you a little few less air bubbles, and you can actually trust what it's telling you, what the water level is. This one's just a little piece of tube that's been drilled, and I think there's a little O-ring in there. And then if you change the sight glass, you'd have to drop the meths burner out, and there's a little nut just on the end of the bottom of the sight glass, so you can lower that out. Tempting just to put another little blow down valve on there, just so you can have another little valve, a little bit of steam effect coming out the bottom, just so you can blow it down just when you're topping up. There's a regulator, so you can see the regulator comes out through the boiler, so you've got a functioning steam dome here as well. The pipe comes up from the top of the boiler. Nicely routed pipe work in there, and there's a nice little pressure gauge on there as well. Goes up to 50 psi, so round about, well, this loco runs on as low as 5 psi if I'm trusting in what this says anyway, but I know it's a very smooth runner. You can get it just to turn over just on a rolling road with fractions of sort of pressure reading on the gauge. So there you go, there's the little tour of the loco. There's other nice little details I probably haven't had time just to point out in this video, but I don't want to bore you any longer. I'll get a video of this loco in steam, maybe with some extra steam effects, because it's freezing cold outside and there's lots of snow on the track. I have to clear that and give it a little run. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the history of this loco other than purchasing it from a seller on eBay. It's a bit of a shame really, because it's obviously been a real skilled model engineer, and it would be nice just to see some of his other locomotives, see what sort of gauges he was working with as well. I imagine he just had a little bee in his bonnet and sort of thought, oh, wouldn't it be good just to get a Mamod loco with some slide valve cylinders, just to show it can be done. What I do like about this loco is, well, pretty much everything about it really, but lots of people sort of say, oh, these smaller locos, they tend to be really fast runners, they're not really that controllable. So especially with 16mm garden railways, people go for larger and larger locos and have these Garretts and coal-fired things, and everything's getting a little bit over scale, and you're losing a bit of that charm of these little 040 locos, which I think will really give you the impression of these industrial narrow gauge railways. The other stuff just seems to be getting really quite ugly in my mind. It's impressive, and with steam locomotives I don't think you can really have an ugly steam locomotive. You can have pretty little locos like this, or you can have really purposeful, rugged sort of industrial things, but I don't think they're well, obviously beauties in the eye of the beholder. My own preference is for these smaller little locos. I think they just sort of typify what is just prototypical on English narrow gauge railways, and well, even looking at a standard gauge, which a lot of these locos seem to be based on as well. But there you go, Mamod SL1 with one or two major modifications, turning it into something quite different. Okay, that's enough of your time for now. I wish you a happy Christmas and a happy New Year.